Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. Alright, I am here today with a little look at Adventure of D, 2nd edition. Plays 1 to 3 players. This game recently was delivered to Kickstarters. And let's see what it says here. You will have an exciting journey throughout the island to defeat the evil Elzuf in the Tower of Death. You will defeat monsters, complete quests, learn skills, gain items, upgrade your stats, and more. Using the Diceless Power Card system, you must plan where you move and where you rest. You can control the random events, and you will make meaningful decisions every turn. So this is yet again another kind of a card-based adventure game. But on the spectrum of those, I think at one end you have something like the Choose Your Own Adventure game, which is pure, 98% story narrative. And this is kind of on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, where this is all like very mechanical. And at its core, it is a race game. You want to race to power up your character, to get enough things, enough stats and equipment, gear, and level up to enter the Tower of Death and defeat the evil sorcerer Elzuf, the ancient evil. And so what you're going to be doing is at the beginning of each game, you're going to randomly lay out these 12 location cards. And each one of these is double-sided with kind of a basic side or an easier side without an underline, and then a more advanced side with an underline. And you can mix and match, and you're going to set those up in like a 4x3 grid. Everybody is going to start in the Castle of Light, and your pawns are going to be, or your players are going to be represented by these little cardboard pawns that come with the game. And you are going to be moving from location to location, going on quests, fighting monsters, taking actions, resting, all in the hopes of powering up your character so you can get to that Tower of Death and defeat the evil. So at the beginning of the game, you're going to take one of these characters, and there are quite a few characters. I really like the character art in this. I believe that the 2nd edition has all new art. Some of it is quite good. Some of it is okay. But for the most part, I love this character art. And the characters, you're going to have stats along the side. You're going to have strength, intelligence, and agility. And those are going to be represented by these power cards that you are actually going to slide under your character. And so if you look at here, so if this was my monk, I have a 1 strength right now. If I ever get up to a 1 intelligence, I will put the intelligence card under like that. And then agility will go under like that. And then as these raise up in power, you can rotate the card to show what your current level is. And those can go up to 8 like so. And then each character is also going to have a skill. And all of the skills are different for each character. So you have a bard, a hobbit, a knight, a ranger, the thief, the elf, the fighter, the scholar, the merchant, the Amazon, the priest, the blue wizard, the ninja, the dwarf, and the druid. So in this little sample game I was playing here, I was playing as a monk. And his power is when you learn a skill, you can draw 2 cards and choose 1. So when you learn a skill, you draw one of the character cards, and that skill gets slotted underneath your card. And so the character cards become a way to upgrade your character with new skills. Now, I really like that. I like multiple use cards, and this game is a fantastic example of multiple use cards. Speaking of which, the character cards also have on the back side they are an item called fairy dust that you can use. And when you get a fairy dust, you just draw one and you put it next to your character on your magic stat. So the magic stat is kind of a currency that you can spend to do certain things, to cast spells, to take certain actions. And just like the power-up cards, the currency, you're just going to, whatever your total is, you're going to keep that on the top there. And then any items you get, you will put underneath there. So the main bulk of the game is this power deck. These are the power cards. And these are going to represent all kinds of different things. These are going to represent the quests you have to solve. They're going to represent monsters and different items. And they're also going to represent your character's hit points and your action points. So at the beginning of your turn, you're going to draw 6 cards. And you are going to have, these are going to represent 6 hit points that you have, as well as you spend these cards for movement, and you also spend them to overcome challenges. And so to move from one area to the next costs 1 card. So if I wanted to move from here to here, I would have to discard 1 card, and I could, it doesn't matter which one, you can discard. And that's the way that you can move. And then at the top of each turn, after everybody has their 6 hit points, the active player is going to draw 1 card. And this is going to be an event that is going to be on one of the locations. So in this instance, this is an agility event, and it is going to take place in the Woods of Mana. So you want to find the Woods of Mana, which would be up here, and you're going to put that card over the Woods of Mana. And now that represents something that you can do on that spot when you get there. And then let's see what you have to do to get there. So the Woods of Mana, this is Knack the Winged Lizard. You would take a action and you would have to pass an Agility 7 test in order to defeat this card. If you win, your agility goes up and you trash this card. If you lose 1, so that would mean you lose a hit point. You have to discard one of your cards from your hand. And you can teleport or check. Checking 1, so there are different terms throughout the game. And this is kind of where like the bulk of the gameplay is represented in these keywords here. The manual comes on 2 sheets. It's 8 pages total. But most of what you're going to be doing is here. It's going to be checking, cycling, exhausting, getting, healing, learning, losing, shock, show, teleport, trash. This is basically all of the mechanisms of the game are going to be represented right here on this page of the rule book. And so it's pretty easy once you get playing. All you ever have to do really is look at this page on page 3 of the rule book, of the rule pamphlet, and you will be set. But the way you would pass a test is, so this guy needed an agility 7. I would look at my cards and I need to have an agility 7. So let's say that my character only had an agility of 2 like this. So that was my character right now. Then I could look at my cards, and if I only had this agility 3 card, well, I could play that. So I would add 3 plus 2 is 5, and then I would check 1. And that would mean that I would draw one of these and I would get to add whatever it was to my total to see if I would win. Now you actually don't have to play the matching card that matches the challenge. You can play any card, but if you play the card that matches the challenge, so if I play an agility card on an agility challenge, at the end of that challenge I can heal 1, which lets me draw another card into my hand, which would represent kind of like gaining back a hit point, and also allowing me to continue my turn because I would have more cards to spend to move around, more cards to spend on other challenges. So it's pretty interesting because this game doesn't use any dice and everything is pretty much out in the open. You can plan your turn pretty well, and you play until you want to rest. At that point. Let's say I only had 2 cards. Let's say I'd spent everything except for 1. You can never go down to 0 hit points. If you go down to 0 hit points, you are dead. So after you had spent 5 cards or maybe healed a couple, as soon as you were down to 1 card, your turn would be over most likely, and you would say, I'm going to rest. Then your turn would be over, and you would draw up to 6 hit points to continue the game. And that's basically what you're going to be doing. Now, one of the interesting things is, like, let's say this was a challenge here at the Castle of Light. You would have to beat this red wolf. It's an agility 10 test. If you win, you get an agility, so you could upgrade your agility power. And also you get an item, and this card becomes an item. So you would get the red fur, where you could take an action at the Woods of Mana, and you could upgrade either one of those and trash this card. So the item, the cards, the power cards, the enemies, the quests also become items. And you would place that like that upside down there, so then you would be reading the item. And so once again, these cards here, they are spent for movement, they are spent for attacking, they are spent for taking actions, and they represent hit points, and some of them also become items. So really creative way to use all of these cards for multiple things. And I like that. I like when games use cards in creative ways. And this game definitely does that. Now, I do think that this game plays 1 to 3. And I do think it's probably a better game to play in a competitive mode with 3 players. You all are going to be going out. You're going to be laying cards down on the table for each other to challenge. And you're going to be racing to see who can get strong enough, fast enough to get to the Tower of Death and defeat the Ancient Evil. When you're playing solo or co-op, you actually have a timer, and you're going to be dealing a certain number of cards, from 5 to 8 of these character cards, and at the end of each round you're going to be adding 1 to the stack, and whenever you run out of these timer cards, then it's game over. And the time is pretty strict. Expert level is only 5, so I mean within 5 turns, if you were playing solo, you would have to get strong enough to beat the evil. That's very difficult, I've found. And to be honest, not a lot of fun for me. I have been playing a couple times, and I am not playing with the timer at all. I'm just kind of like, still getting the flow. I'm not out there to challenge myself in this game yet. But I can see it being pretty fun if you can get good at it. And I think this is a game that you can get good at. It's a game that is it's kind of puzzly. There is resource management with your hand, and as your cards all do different things. It can be also a little brain burny, because it isn't just I'm going to roll some dice and go on an adventure and see what happens type of game. But in the competitive mode with 3 players, I think this kind of becomes a more competitive game of something like Runebound or Talisman, a more competitive version of something like that. Something that's not so much just a kind of a wild and crazy adventure, but something that you kind of have to think about and plan your move and plan your resources. And there is room for games like this in the games that I appreciate. It's on a certain end of the spectrum, and I can appreciate that. Now, one problem with the game is that the cards they're pretty thin. They're not very high quality cards, and that is a bummer. I did feel like I needed to sleeve this game, and I really don't usually like sleeving my games. So that's not exactly an issue. The issue is once you sleeve everything, it no longer fits back into the original box. And I kind of like the original box. I think it has a neat look to it. So I have to kind of keep everything, the box and the cards, in this supplemental box that I have. But yes, that is the Adventure of D. So like I said, I think it's available at his website, jackdgames.com. I was a backer on Kickstarter. I have been looking forward to this for quite some time, because the first edition has gotten some pretty good word of mouth. It's a very small kind of niche, totally indie style game. People had talked about the multiple use cards and how creative it was. And so I was very happy to find out when he was creating his second edition. And I'm pretty happy with the game. I think it's fun. It's not something I'm going to play all the time. I am looking forward to playing it with some buddies in a competitive mode. I do wish maybe there was a little bit more of a narrative aspect to the game, because a lot of it is combat, is overcoming these combat challenges. It would be cool if there was just maybe a tiny bit more text to enjoy a little story, but it's not that kind of game. It's a game about resource management and planning your turn precisely. So, all right, guys, well, I hope you enjoyed that look at Adventure of D. And take it easy. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.